On the surface, they were just three ordinary teenage girls in a small West Virginia town. Best friends who laughed together, posted selfies online, and shared secrets late into the night. To anyone watching, they were inseparable. The kind of friendship parents hoped their kids would find. But behind the smiles and inside jokes, something far darker was taking shape. In July 2012, 16-year-old Skylar Neese vanished after slipping out of her bedroom windows to meet her two closest friends, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. At first, it seemed like a typical runaway case. But the truth was more disturbing than anyone could imagine. For 6 agonizing months, her parents begged for answers, while Shelia and Rachel acted like nothing had happened, even joining the search, sitting in Skylar's living room and posting cryptic tweets online. What nobody knew then was that the two girls had been hiding a secret so cold, so calculated, it would shock the nation. This isn't just the story of a missing teenager. It's the story of betrayal at its most horrifying level. When the people you trust most decide you don't deserve to live. In the quiet town of Star City, West Virginia, life seemed as ordinary as it could be. It was the kind of community where neighbors knew each other, where families shared dinners on porches during warm evenings, and where teenagers filled their summers with sports, shopping trips, and long conversations online. For a young girl named Skylar Neese, this small town was both home and the backdrop for dreams she believed would one day take her far beyond its borders. Born in 1996 to Dave and Mary Neese, Skylar was their only child. Her parents adored her, describing her as witty, outgoing, and fiercely intelligent. Teachers at University High School remembered her as a bright student, full of curiosity and drive. Friends recalled a girl who loved music, movies, and had a quick sense of humor that made people laugh even on their worst days. Online, she was active on Twitter and Facebook, often sharing her thoughts with a confidence that made her seem older than her years. Like many teenagers, Skylar's world revolved around her closest friends. 2 girls in particular became her constant companions, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. The 3 were nearly inseparable. They attended school dances together, went to football games on Friday nights, and spent countless hours posting selfies, inside jokes, and updates about their lives online. To anyone looking in from the outside, they appeared to be a perfect trio. A tight-knit group of best friends who had found in each other a bond unshakable by the trials of adolescence. But behind the smiling pictures and playful tweets, things were not as perfect as they seemed. Skylar was independent by nature, someone unafraid to speak her mind, even if it meant confronting her friends. Shelia, on the other hand, was headstrong and dominant, often trying to control situations. Rachel usually acted as the follower, going along with what Shelia wanted, even if it didn't always sit well with Skylar. Their friendship, while close, carried an undercurrent of tension that only those closest to them could sense. Still, to Skylar, these girls were her world. She confided in them, shared her secrets, and trusted them with the kind of vulnerability only teenagers can offer. They laughed together about crushes, made promises about the future, and leaned on each other during the ups and downs of high school life. For her parents, it was reassuring to see their daughter surrounded by friends. In a small town, strong friendships often served as both protection and comfort. Skylar dreamed of becoming a lawyer one day. She worked part-time at Wendy's, saving money for college, and she had a reputation as a reliable employee. Her determination stood out. She wasn't the type to drift without direction. She planned ahead, thought seriously about her future, and wasn't afraid to put in the effort to achieve her goals. Yet, like any teenager, she also longed for fun, freedom, and adventure. The digital age amplified that longing. Skylar often tweeted about her feelings, sometimes joking, sometimes venting. Social media gave her a stage where she could be both candid and cryptic, offering glimpses into her life that, in hindsight, carried unsettling weight. At the time, though, they read like the normal musings of a teenager navigating friendships, frustrations, and the uncertainties of growing up. To her parents and teachers, Skylar's life appeared to be on track. To her friends, she was loyal and dependable. To herself, she was just a girl trying to enjoy the present while preparing for the future. No one could have imagined that the same friendships that brought her joy and belonging would soon unravel in the darkest way possible. This is where her story begins. With a young girl in a small town, full of dreams, surrounded by people she believed she could trust. It is a reminder that sometimes, beneath the surface of ordinary life, danger can quietly take root, waiting for the moment when it will change everything forever. July 6th, 2012, began like any other summer day in Star City, West Virginia. For Skylar Neese, it was the start of a weekend she expected to spend with her two best friends, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. At 16 years old, sneaking out for late-night drives was a thrill, a small act of rebellion in a town where nothing ever seemed to happen. To her parents, Skylar was safe at home in her bedroom. But as the night stretched into early morning, she made a choice that would change everything. Sometime around midnight, Skylar quietly slid her bedroom window open. Surveillance footage from her apartment building later revealed the scene. A petite figure carrying her purse, slipping into the darkness, and heading toward a waiting car parked just a few feet away. Inside that car were Shelia and Rachel, smiling and eager for what Skylar believed was just another night of fun. The trio had done it before, late-night drives, blasting music, laughing about inside jokes. Nothing about that night seemed unusual, at least not to Skylar. But when morning came, Skylar was nowhere to be found. Her parents, Dave and Mary Neese, were immediately alarmed. Skylar was responsible and predictable. She worked part-time at Wendy's, and she never skipped her shifts. When she didn't show up for work the next day, her parents knew something was terribly wrong. Mary tried to convince herself that maybe Skylar had simply gone to a friend's house and lost track of time. But deep down, dread began to take hold. Dave, on the other hand, moved quickly into action. He called everyone he could think of, asking if they had seen Skylar. At first, the police treated the case as a possible runaway situation. Teenagers disappear overnight all the time, they reasoned, and most return within a day or two. But this explanation didn't sit right with the Neese family. Skylar had left behind everything: her phone charger, clothes, and personal items. More disturbing was her sudden silence on social media. Skylar was constantly active online. If she had run away, surely she would have posted something. Instead, her accounts went completely dark. As hours turned into days, worry grew into full-blown panic. Dave Neese began searching on his own, driving around town, checking parking lots, and calling out his daughter's name in the hope she might be nearby. He plastered flyers, begged for tips, and refused to let the case fade into the background. Mary tried to keep hope alive, but she admitted later that every hour without answers felt like watching her worst fears slowly come true. While her parents were in agony, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf played a different role. Outwardly, they acted like nothing had happened. They joined search efforts, pretended to be heartbroken, and kept up appearances as if Skylar's disappearance shocked them too. But behind closed doors, their behavior told another story. Shelia, known for her bold personality, kept posting carefree tweets and photos. She laughed online, made jokes, and gave the impression that her life was untouched by tragedy. Her lack of concern stood out to some, but others chalked it up to teenage detachment. Rachel, however, was unraveling. Though she, too, maintained the facade, cracks in her composure began to show. She grew anxious, withdrawn, and at times suffered emotional breakdowns. Friends noticed, but no one guessed the weight of the secret she was carrying. The investigation moved slowly at first. Without clear evidence of foul play, law enforcement was limited in what they could do. Skylar's disappearance became a mystery, her face appearing on posters and news segments. Her parents made desperate pleas to the community, begging for any lead that could bring her home. And all the while, Shelia and Rachel continued to weave themselves into the search, standing side by side with the family, even as they knew the truth of what had happened. For weeks, the story remained one of uncertainty. A teenager gone without a trace, a family clinging to hope, and two friends who seemed supportive on the surface, but whose lives were built on lies. Skylar's disappearance had begun as a simple late-night outing, a decision that should have been harmless. Instead, it marked the start of a nightmare that no one in Star City could have imagined. As the days dragged into weeks, hope for Skylar's safe return grew dim. The Neese family remained relentless, holding on to the belief that answers had to be out there somewhere. Investigators, too, intensified their focus. With no sign of Skylar, they began carefully retracing her steps, pulling phone records, checking surveillance footage, and most importantly, examining her closest relationships. It didn't take long for suspicion to land on Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. From the start, their stories raised quiet red flags. Both girls claimed they had dropped Skylar off near her house that night, insisting she had safely returned home. But surveillance footage from the apartment building contradicted them. Skylar had never come back. When questioned again, the girls repeated their version with rehearsed confidence. The problem was, their details didn't always match. To outsiders, Shelia projected confidence, even arrogance. She inserted herself into the investigation, sitting with Skylar's parents, acting supportive, and telling anyone who would listen how much she missed her best friend. Yet her demeanor never quite matched her words. Instead of sorrow, she often seemed indifferent, even smug. Her social media activity only deepened the unease. Shelia tweeted cryptic, unsettling posts. Short, cold statements that in hindsight read like confessions. "We really did go on 3, one tweet read. Another chillingly declared, "No one on this earth can handle me and Rachel." Rachel, however, was unraveling. Known as the quieter one of the trio, she struggled to maintain composure. To her peers, it was clear she was under enormous pressure. She broke down crying at unexpected times, withdrew from her usual activities, and seemed haunted. Her erratic behavior didn't escape investigators' notice. As weeks passed, police leaned harder on both girls. They had been the last to see Skylar alive, and their inconsistent accounts couldn't be ignored. Behind closed doors, detectives methodically pressed Rachel, probing at her guilt. Unlike Shelia, who thrived on manipulation and control, Rachel was fragile. Each interview chipped away at her defenses. Finally, in late December 2012, 6 months after Skylar vanished, Rachel reached her breaking point. During a heated argument at home, she suffered a complete emotional collapse. Panicked, her family called police, and soon Rachel was sitting across from investigators, unable to carry the weight of her secret any longer. Through tears and trembling words, Rachel confessed. She and Shelia had lured Skylar out that night under the pretense of a joyride. But their true plan was darker. For months, the two had quietly plotted Skylar's murder. The reason, Rachel admitted, was shockingly cold and senseless. They simply didn't like her anymore. The words stunned investigators. No jealousy over a boyfriend. No heated argument gone too far. No clear provocation. Just an empty, chilling decision that Skylar didn't fit into their lives anymore. To them, ending her life was easier than ending the friendship. Rachel's confession shattered the illusion of teenage innocence and friendship. Skylar had trusted these girls with her secrets, her laughter, her future plans. And in return, they had driven her to a remote spot, pulled knives from under their clothes, and attacked her. Rachel painted a picture of a betrayal so cruel it was difficult to comprehend. The weight of Rachel's words marked a turning point in the investigation. For the Neese family, the revelation was devastating. Their daughter hadn't run away. She hadn't been taken by a stranger. She had been betrayed and murdered by the very friends who once promised loyalty. Shelia Eddy, the girl who posed for smiling selfies with Skylar, who sat in the Neese living room pretending to grieve, was now revealed as a cold-blooded killer. Rachel Shoaf, the quiet follower, was equally complicit. Together, they had destroyed a life, not out of rage, but out of something far more chilling: apathy. The confession tore away the last shred of hope. Skylar wasn't coming home, and the two girls who had once been the center of her world were now at the center of a nightmare. Rachel Shoaf's confession was only the beginning. Investigators still needed the full truth, and most importantly, they needed to find Skylar. With the weight of guilt crushing her, Rachel agreed to take police to the place where her best friend's life had ended. She described how on the night of July 6th, 2012, she and Shelia Eddy picked Skylar up just after midnight. To Skylar, it must have felt like one of their usual secret outings, a late-night joyride between three inseparable friends. She climbed out of her bedroom window with her purse, as surveillance cameras captured her slipping into the waiting car below. She had no reason to doubt them. These were her closest companions. But as Rachel told investigators, Skylar had no idea she was being driven to her death. The girls crossed the state line into Pennsylvania, steering toward a remote wooded area far from the safety of their hometown. Their cover story was innocent enough. They wanted to smoke and hang out in peace. Skylar, being adventurous and trusting, went along without protest. When they arrived, the three of them walked together into the darkness of the woods. To anyone watching from afar, it might have looked like three friends spending a summer night under the stars. But beneath their hoodies, Shelia and Rachel carried knives. According to Rachel's chilling account, once they were far enough into the woods, the signal was given. The girls counted to 3, then turned on Skylar. In a flurry of violence, they began stabbing her. Skylar screamed, fought, and tried desperately to run, but she was overpowered. Each wound cut deeper into the betrayal than the blade itself. She was not just fighting for her life. She was fighting against the two people she trusted most. Despite her resistance, the attack was relentless. Rachel admitted that Skylar's final words were heartbreaking. Why? A question that had no real answer. For Shelia and Rachel, their motive was chillingly simple. They didn't like her anymore. When Skylar finally collapsed, the two stood over her, bloodied and breathless. In the aftermath, panic set in. They dragged her body off the path, hiding her beneath branches, rocks, and leaves, hoping nature itself would erase their crime. Then, just as quickly, they left, driving back as if nothing had happened. For months, Skylar's remains lay undiscovered. Her parents, unaware of the truth, clung to the hope that their daughter was still alive. Meanwhile, Shelia Eddy carried on with a disturbing sense of normalcy. She laughed with classmates, hung out with friends, and even spent time in the Neese household, offering empty comfort to the very people whose lives she had destroyed. Her social media posts only deepened the horror in retrospect. Tweets like, "We really did go on 3," hinted at the dark secrets she and Rachel shared. Rachel, however, could not keep up the facade. Guilt consumed her, and eventually she led investigators to the very woods where Skylar had been murdered. In January 2013, after 6 agonizing months of searching, authorities recovered skeletal remains. Dental records confirmed what the Neese family had feared most: Skylar was gone. The discovery brought devastation, but also clarity. The months of confusion, rumors, and unanswered questions were over. The truth was darker than anyone could have imagined. Skylar Neese had not been abducted by a stranger or fallen victim to an accident. She had been betrayed, hunted, and murdered by her 2 best friends. The brutality of the act stunned even seasoned investigators. These were not hardened criminals with violent pasts. They were teenage girls, honor students, cheerleaders, the kind of kids parents trusted to sleep over at each other's homes. Yet together, they had committed one of the most cold-blooded acts imaginable. For the Neese family, the revelation was unbearable. They had trusted these girls, welcomed them into their home, and watched them share laughter with their daughter. Now, they had to face the reality that the friendship Skylar valued most was the very thing that had destroyed her. The woods in Pennsylvania became more than just a crime scene. They stood as a haunting reminder of how ordinary lives can twist into something unimaginable. Where teenage friendship ends not in drifting apart, but in murder. The investigation had finally revealed the unthinkable truth. But for Skylar's family, closure would come only through justice. The courtroom became the final stage of this tragedy. A place where the lies, betrayal, and horror would be laid bare. Rachel Shoaf, the girl who had broken under guilt and confessed, stood before the judge first. Her cooperation with authorities had saved the case from going cold, and because of that, prosecutors offered her a deal. In exchange for her testimony against Shelia Eddy, Rachel pled guilty to second-degree murder. The sentence handed down was 30 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10. As she wept and apologized, the weight of what she had done seemed to crush her. But for the Neese family, no apology could ever erase the pain. Shelia Eddy's trial was different. Throughout the hearings, Shelia displayed a chilling lack of remorse. Witnesses recalled how she smirked, rolled her eyes, and carried herself with arrogance. To the world, she seemed incapable of grasping the enormity of her crime. When her sentencing came, the courtroom fell silent. Shelia was given life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The punishment ensured she would spend her youth behind bars, but for Skylar's parents, even that felt hollow compared to the loss of their only daughter. Dave and Mary Neese spoke openly about the heartbreak of sitting across from the girls they had once welcomed into their home. The same friends who shared meals, laughter, and secrets with Skylar were the ones who had planned her murder. The betrayal cut deeper than any sentence could heal. Dave, through tears, told the court, "You stole our daughter from us, and we'll never forgive you." Out of tragedy, however, came change. Skylar's case exposed a troubling gap in West Virginia's missing child procedures. When Skylar first disappeared, no Amber Alert was issued because she was not believed to have been abducted. By the time suspicions grew, valuable hours had been lost. Lawmakers responded with what became known as Skylar's Law, legislation that required immediate Amber Alerts for all missing children, regardless of the circumstances. It was a legacy carved from heartbreak, ensuring no other family would face the same delays. In the years that followed, Skylar's memory was honored with vigils, murals, and scholarships. Her classmates, teachers, and community gathered to keep her spirit alive. For her parents, each day was a reminder of what was stolen, the milestones they would never see, the laughter silenced too soon. Yet, they found purpose in sharing her story, warning others of the hidden dangers that can lie even within close friendships. The haunting reality of Skylar's murder continues to resonate. It is a chilling reminder that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers lurking in the dark. Sometimes, it comes from the very people we trust most, the friends we believe will stand by us no matter what. Skylar Neese's story remains both heartbreaking and cautionary. Though her life was cut short, her name lives on through the law that protects others, and through the awareness her tragedy has raised. In the end, her legacy is one of painful lessons, enduring love, and a community forever changed by the loss of a bright, trusting girl who just wanted to belong.